Hey guys, sorry about the strange camera angle. Had no intention of making a video today, but I received a message this morning on Patreon from one of our patrons asking about this topic, and I started to write him an answer and realised that it was just too complicated to write down, so decided to make this video for him instead, and hopefully someone else will find this of some interest. So he was asking about, apparently he's married to a Japanese lady and they're thinking about coming and living in Japan, and he was asking about raising Hafu kids in Japan, what it's like for the kids, you know, if they get a hard time being Hafu kids. So it's really complicated. That's probably a good place to start, is with that phrase. Usually they call kids half, if they're half Japanese and half something else, they'll often get referred to as Hafu. And you hear it on TV, you hear it, people use it all the time, and usually it's not meant with any sort of intent to insult or make people feel bad. In fact, often it's used as a sort of a complimentary thing. You know, there's all sorts of Hafu people that have been celebrities on Japanese TV, and they're often referred to as Hafu, you know, to their face, or, you know, when people are talking to them, and also, what's it like being a Hafu, or of course you're a Hafu, and raising our kids. You get the comment, usually comments like that tend to come from adults, not from other kids. And the adults will say things, you know, like one thing that I've had with our daughters is that people say, of course they're Hafu, so they're beautiful, right? Because they consider that people that are Hafu are usually attractive, right? That's what a lot of Japanese people say. And so I'll say that comment, of course, Tashkani, they're half foreigners and half Japanese, so of course they're beautiful, which obviously that's meant as a compliment, you know. But some non-Japanese people find that comment, that phrase, a little bit offensive, the Hafu thing. And just something about it, isn't it, to a native English speaker, calling someone half a person, it sort of doesn't sound good, does it? It just doesn't, you know, and I've never been comfortable with it. I understand it's not meant as an insult, and usually it comes with a compliment, but it's always bothered me. It doesn't seem to bother my kids, it doesn't bother them, and I mean, that's really the most important thing. That's what our friend was talking about, was our patron was asking about, was it what's it like for the kids. So addressing that particular topic, it doesn't seem to be an issue for the kids usually. It's more of an issue for me, I think. It bothers me, I don't like hearing it, but people use it all the time, and usually not in a negative way, so I've just got to live with it, you know. Where else to go with this? There's so much to talk about with this. Probably what a lot of it stems from is, in Japan, there's the thing about Japanese culture, everyone wants to, or most people want to be the same as everybody else. Most people don't want to do or say or think or dress any differently to anybody else. So that's sort of like the focus, you know, and it's really important to them. And I've found that with my wife as well, you know, that if I start to do something different from what other people are doing, it can make her really uncomfortable. Well, nobody's doing that, everybody's doing this. And it doesn't matter how stupid the thing is that everybody's doing. If that's what everybody's doing, that's what we're going to do. And some of you have been watching our videos for a while would have heard that talked about lots of times. That, you know, you just do what everybody else is doing, and it doesn't matter how stupid it is, you know, that if everybody's doing it, that's what you've got to do. And if you try and do something different, then that means that you think you're smarter than everybody else, you know, so it's not cool. So there's this sort of obsession with being the same as everybody else, and of course, my kids are Japanese, right? They were born in Japan. One of them's never been outside Japan. One of them spent a couple of weeks in Australia. But basically, you know, they're Japanese citizens. They're born in Japan. Their experience of life, as far as school and socially and everything else, has been the same as every other Japanese kid. The only difference is that their father happens to be not Japanese, which means that in our house, some things are done a bit differently, and there's some things are a bit different. But outside the house, their total experience of Japan has been the same as everybody else, which means it can make them uncomfortable sometimes when people point out that they're different. And it's the same as any Japanese people. I mean, I've seen when we've been with our extended family and the kids are all doing something and one kid can't do it, or one kid does it differently or something, and they get really upset because they don't want to be different from anyone else. You know, some of us come from cultures where being different is cool, you know, and some people go right out of their way. I mean, we probably all either did it ourselves or had friends that did things to be really radically different from everybody else just because that's what they wanted to do, because it was considered interesting and fun and everything else. Whereas in Japan, usually the kids just want to be the same as everybody else. They don't want to stand out. They just want to be the same as everybody else, which means it does bother them if people point out the differences, you know. Having said that, it hasn't happened a lot. It hasn't happened a lot. I mean, my kids have got brown eyes. They don't have black eyes like all their friends do. They have brown eyes. But of course, usually the comments they get about that is how beautiful their eyes are. But because of this obsession with being the same as everybody else, it does bother them a little bit. Now and again, a lot of the comments you get, it's sort of an innocence. I almost said ignorance, but it's not really ignorance. Well, it sort of is ignorance, but it's probably more polite to call it an innocence. Is that a lot of Japanese people have never been around foreigners, you know, and they've never spoken to a foreigner. You know, I've met lots of people like that have never spoken. I met an old man here once when we bought our house, and the old man said this is the first time, when he spoke to me, it's the first time he'd ever spoken to a foreigner in his life, you know. And so a lot of the comments that they make come from this innocent place where they have never met a foreigner before, so they'll say things. You know, one example comes to mind is one of my girls was doing the Aiken test, which is a test of English, and so we had to go to this testing centre, and my girl was getting ready to go in, and a couple of her friends were there, and they were talking, and then one of the mothers said to me, oh, of course it'll be easy for her, right? And she heard this mother say it, and it really upset her, because she gets told that quite a lot, that, oh, English is going to be easy for you, which is same as saying to a Japanese kid, oh, your parents are Japanese, so kanji must be easy for you. And if you talk to most Japanese kids and ask them what they think of kanji, most of them hate it, and they find it really, really difficult, you know, because kanji is really difficult. So saying to a Japanese kid, oh, your parents are Japanese, so kanji must be easy for you, would be an ignorant thing to say, wouldn't it? And it would upset them, and it'd upset the parents, and oh, well, you know, no, of course not, you know. So it's a fairly ignorant thing to say. So saying to my kids, English must be easy for you, why? You know, why is it easy? But you can sort of understand their thinking. Their thinking is, because I speak English to my kids all the time, that means when they do English tests, reading and writing English, that it must be easy, right? Which is just their assumption. But keep in mind, my kids have been raised in Japan. Their experience at school of English is exactly the same as all the other kids at school, which until high school or junior high school is virtually zero. You know, nothing of consequence. Right, so, and the reading and writing, we don't do a lot of reading and writing English in a place. So that assumption that just because the father's foreign, and I've said this to my kids before, you know, they assume the only difference between them and the other kids is that their father is foreign. They're not foreign, you know, they're not foreign. And now and again, you will get someone, if they're with me, usually, and see again, usually it's not kids, usually it's adults that make these comments. You know, and sometimes if my girls are with me, people will say to them, where are you from? Right? They don't usually get that if they're not with me, because they look Japanese enough that usually people won't ask them. But if they're with me, they'll sometimes say to my kids, where are you from? And my kids will just say, I'm Japanese. You know? And then sometimes the person who's just put their foot in their mouth will make it worse by saying, oh, your Japanese is really good, right, to my kids. Your Japanese is really good, which is ridiculous, right? But again, it comes from an innocent place. They don't know anyone. I mean, those of us who've come from multicultural countries, you know, I went to school with a girl, I went to primary school, elementary school, with a girl from India who'd been born in Australia, you know, her parents are from India. A boy, Yuji Sano. If you're watching Yuji, how you doing? Yuji Sano was born in Australia, his parents were from Japan. And you know, my girlfriend, my first girlfriend, her parents, her mother was from Thailand. So, you know, it's in a multicultural country, you know, to go to your friend's house and your friend's parents are from another country isn't unusual. You know, Italian parents or Greek parents or from somewhere else. You know, and you don't ask your friend that's in the same class as you at school, you know, where he's from usually, because we just accept, you know, that everybody's sort of comes from different places. So, but in Japan, see, they don't have that. In Japan, they don't have that. Quite often, that they've never spoken to a foreigner, they didn't go to school with a foreigner, you know, their neighbours aren't foreigners, they just don't know anything about foreigners at all. And so the concept to them, and I've had people smile when people have said to me, about, said to me or the kids, in front of the kids, where are you from? And I've said, oops, sorry, I just realised you've fallen over. Sorry about that. There you go. Is that a better view? Sometimes when parents have said, or adults have said to me in front of the kids, you know, where are you from? About the kids, you know, where are the kids from? And I've said, they're Japanese. They were born here and they've lived here all their lives. And sometimes they'll smile. Sometimes the adults will smile, which sort of, again, it makes it worse. For me, not necessarily for my kids, but for me it bothers me because they've just made an ignorant comment. They've got a response to it and then they smile because their sort of thinking is, you know, that because their father's not Japanese, that means they're not Japanese either, right? So then we're talking about genetics or DNA or something, aren't we? You know? So I'm trying to tell our friend what the experience has been like. I think probably to sort of condense it a bit, from the kids' point of view, purely the kids' point of view, now and again they've had a comment when I've been there, and it's actually not bad when if I'm there and they get, oh, you've fallen over again. Sorry about that. It's not actually too bad when they get a comment and I'm there, because I get a chance then to actually address it with them and say to them, you know, you're going to get comments like that. They don't mean anything bad by it, you know, and I get to address it, which isn't a bad thing. Hasn't really been any bullying or anything at school. I think kids are pretty cool because kids just sort of accept kids for being kids, you know, and they'll sort of have their buddies at school and their buddies are their buddies and they're just one of the buddies, and, you know, the kids don't really think about it. Their name, of course, I mean, you know, I've got a classic foreign name which has to be written in katakana, and that sort of stands out a little bit. That turns heads sometimes if you're at a graduation or something and they're reading all the names out and they read our name out, you know, you'll see heads turn, because, you know, everybody else has the same Japanese names that everybody else has, you know. So I mentioned this on a video once before. There are very few Japanese names that people haven't heard before. There's only a sort of limited number of Japanese names. So they rarely hear a name they haven't heard before, you know, and so when they do, heads turn. When they hear a name they haven't heard before, heads turn. Which again, is, you know, you can call it innocent or you can call it ignorant, whatever, but, you know, so the Japanese people actually tell you that they're island people. And when they say that, they're talking about the fact that they've got this sort of they've had this life where they've been, you know, on this island and their experience of the world is limited. That's what they mean when they say that. And that's really true. That's really true. So again, I got off the topic again. What's it like for the kids? I'd say to our friend, don't let it worry you. Don't let it worry you. That I tell my kids that kids will get there are some kids that are bullies, and those bullies will bully other kids based on anything that they can find. So if the kid happens to be a little bit heavy, or a little bit skinny, or a little bit short, or a little bit tall, or a little bit whatever, a little bit, you know, whatever the kid's got going on, the bullies will always find something, won't they, that they can use to bully kids. So I've told my kids that before, that, you know, don't worry about it. There's always going to be a kid at school who likes to bully other people, and, you know, he's going to find something, that person's hair's too long or too short or too messy or too, you know, he'll find something about everybody that he'll bully them about, you know. So the fact that your eyes are brown, you know, or your dad's a foreigner, or your name's a funny name or something, you know, that doesn't matter because they'll find something to bully other people. It hasn't been a big issue. My kids tell me now and again, very rarely by the way, but now and again something will happen like that, or those examples I've given you have been over the lifetime of the kids. You know, they're not that common. They're not that common, and I suspect in a lot of those cases, I've remembered them because they bothered me for different reasons, but the kids probably forgotten all about them. You know, and you watch the kids with their friends, like when we go to graduation things at the school or events at the school, or go to a festival, and their friends will be there and they'll be hanging out with their friends, and you watch them relating to each other, and they're just another one of the kids. You know, the fact that they've been born here and brought up here, their Japanese is the same as the other kids. Their thinking is pretty much the same as the other kids, and the way they interact and everything else, you know. So to our friend, I'd say, don't worry about it too much, mate. I reckon they'll be okay. You know, I reckon they'll be okay. I don't know what it'd be like. You know, that's my experience of an Australian guy married to a Japanese lady and raising kids that were born here. I don't know what it'd be like if both the parents were foreign and they came here later on. I know I met an Indian dude here once, a young dude who was about 20 years old, and his parents brought him here halfway through school, maybe halfway through elementary school or something, and his parents were both Indian, and he sort of came here cold turkey. I think that'd be pretty hard. It'd be pretty hard to blend in, because that's what it's all like here for the kids and for us, for the adults. It's all about blending in and being, you know, as close as you can to being the same as everybody else. Pretty much, you know. It's the way to go, and it's sort of what you're expected to do. And if the kids have been raised here, it's sort of easy for them to do that. Or at least if they've got one Japanese parent, you know, they're going to have that natural Japaneseness in them. So, yeah, to our man, I'd say, yeah, don't worry about it, mate. I think they'll be fine. I don't know if it would be harder than it would be in another country. I mean, you know, there's always bullies, aren't there? There are always bullies. One problem there is in Japan is that bullying is only recently starting to be recognised. Power hara, they call it for adults, power harassment, and they've started to talk about it a little bit. You know, bosses harassing employees in the workplace and or abusing them, you know, or customers. We talked about that in a video recently. Customers harassing staff in places and bullying them. So same at school. That's a bit of a problem with the kohai senpai thing, the senior friend, junior friend thing, is that system works really nicely if your senpai is a nice person, but if your senpai is an a-hole, you could be in some fairly serious bullying, and Japanese society doesn't really address it. You know, the teachers pretty much just let bullying happen here, and their thinking about it usually is that's what keeps society conforming. That bullying people for doing different things helps keep Japanese society sort of organised and orderly. Sorry guys, sorry about that. I wasn't planning to do this video, obviously. But yeah, that's sort of the way bullying is seen here. That when people do something different or behave differently from other people and then are bullied for it, that sort of forces them to behave like everybody else. And I've seen that. I've seen classes when I've gone to watch my kids' class, and I've seen kids being bullied by other kids for not doing what everybody else is doing, and the teachers just ignore it. You know, not all teachers, of course. I mean, they are sort of growingly aware of it, but yeah, my point is, you know, we haven't had any major dramas. We really haven't. I haven't had my kids coming home crying because of anything. There hasn't been anything major at all. It's all been fairly minor, and I would suspect that no matter where the kids go to school in the world, there'll always be some bullies, won't there? And they'll give them a hard time, pretty much. Not every. There are some civilized countries. I believe Northern Europe has some of the most civilized countries in the world. Probably don't have a lot of bullying going on there, but you know, there's always going to be someone, isn't there? So to our friend, I'd say don't let it stop you, don't let it worry you. Your kids will be fine. As always with Japan, the advantages of being here outweigh the disadvantages. So before my first child was born, we had to decide if we wanted to raise her here or in Australia. And when I weighed it all up, I came to the conclusion that it's way better to raise them here. Just because all those things, you know, the low crime rates, you know, she can walk around at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. She can walk back from a friend's place down dark streets and things, and I don't really have to worry, you know, and it's just such a clean, civilized, organized society. We don't have big, you know, you don't have kids smoking tobacco or pot or alcohol, or, you know, that you don't have, usually you don't have all those problems happening in high school, and we don't have to sort of worry about that sort of stuff. The boys are all pretty, usually are all pretty soft, so you don't have to worry about teenage pregnancies and stuff. I mean, all that stuff does happen, but it's pretty rare, you know. It's a good place to bring up kids. I mean, the school thing's pretty harsh. They spend a lot of time at school, as we talked about before, but, you know, they're all pretty happy, you know, and they're not sort of hanging around outside convenience stores smoking cigarettes and stuff like they would be in some places, you know. It's pretty good. So overall, I'd say to our man, bring your kids here and enjoy being here, because it's good. It's really good here. And then when they get older, I know my English friends' kids have just moved back to England. When they get older, they can decide where they prefer to be. Usually they tend to want to stay here, but you know, they'll have an option when they're older, won't they? Once they finished high school, what they want to do next. So you've also got the option of international schools here too, if you want to go down that route. That's what our English friend did, but we didn't do that. My kids just go to just normal public schools with all their friends, you know, all their neighbourhood friends. So anyway, I don't really know where I'm going here. I'm going to visit someone here and I don't really know where it is. So hope that answers our friend's question. Really sorry about the camera, guys. I just had to get the video made and I wasn't prepared. I didn't have all my mountings and my second camera and all the other stuff, so hopefully it wasn't too painful. Anyway, there was that. More videos coming soon.